In terms of the impact on mankind, particularly when we look through a military lens, some dates stick out more than others. Think August the 6th, 1945 and September the 11th, 2001. I reckon January the 19th, 2010 qualifies as a notable date as well, because two events that day encapsulated one of the most ethically and legally challenging military practices of our time, and one that seemingly Ukraine is employing both in the occupied territories and inside Russia itself. The state-sponsored targeting of specific individuals, the controversial practice known as targeted killing.
Are you happy in your new job, Mr. Sheps?
Morning.
Britain's new Defence Secretary got himself into a bit of a pickle recently.
Do you feel like you've got big shoes to fill, Mr. Sheps?
Over the so-called kill list and whether it would have included Yevgeny Prigozhin, the former head of the now outlawed in the UK Wagner Group, had he not died in a totally explainable and not at all suspicious plane crash. Meanwhile, in occupied Ukraine and Russia itself, a number of Kremlin collaborators, commanders and commentators have also died in mysterious but often violent circumstances. We'll talk about the incorrectly titled but journalistically exciting kill list in a moment. But first, what happened back in 2010? On January the 19th in Dubai, a senior Hamas member, Mahmoud al-Mabou, was allegedly killed by a small Israeli assassination team. Meanwhile, in Pakistan, in what was one of the first such uses for the new technology, a US drone killed 6 alleged militants in North Waziristan.
There are elements operating in Pakistan that, if allowed to do so, would go to Afghanistan and kill Americans. So we have to take measures in order to prevent those attacks from happening, and many times that is to go to the source of where those attacks are being planned and orchestrated.
Both incidents illuminate legal and ethical challenges that have been made possible by the merging of technology, society's demand for precision, and uncharted legal waters. Technological advances in the form of surveillance assets, precision weapons and cyber spying, combined with an increasingly casualty-averse Western public, mean we are now at the point where the philosophical and ethical question of whether it's morally right to choose to kill a specific individual rather than just target the enemy is no longer of purely academic interest. Public opinion, especially in the West, abhors collateral damage, the accidental harm visited upon civilians and those who should be protected from the ravages of war. This revulsion can now have real effects and constrain state activity to an unprecedented degree. In 2013, former British Prime Minister David Cameron experienced this firsthand when, after the use of chemical weapons by Syria's President Bashar al-Assad, he put the prospect of British military action to a vote in Parliament and lost. President Obama later said losing Britain's support was the reason the US also took no action, despite his own red line having been crossed. So what's to be done? We want bullies, thugs and dictators to be dealt with, but understand military action can sometimes be very messy. Throw enough heavy metal and high explosive around and a lot of the wrong people are going to be killed. This will do your cause no good whatsoever and could damage your long-term moral credibility as a nation. Which is why some observers suggest that targeted killings are a morally superior way of dealing with threats because they limit collateral damage and are preferable to all-out war. So, more precision in the application of lethal force by drone strikes and special forces teams and so on can only be a good thing, right? Well, possibly, but only if nested in a legal and moral framework that is demonstrably just in the eyes of the majority of the world. The media love the thought of a blacklist of assassination targets, but I'm afraid the whole thing is more bureaucratic treacle than poison jam. This joint prioritised effects list is known by different but similar titles in different countries, does name individuals subject to detention operations, sometimes called kill or capture missions, but it also lists other desirable effects: influence, coerce, recruit, and so on. It's compiled through a stringent process and is regularly reviewed, all under the watchful eyes of the lawyers. And then there's the application. Drones, of course, can be a double-edged sword, usually, but by no means always, precise, with inevitable and righteous backlash, but a way of fighting that minimises the risk to your own people. To those without access to such technology, killing from a safe distance can feel a little unfair, thus undermining your moral cause. There's a feeling that if you want to kill people, you should put your own military personnel in harm's way, that you should have skin literally in the game. So are assassination teams a better option? After all, you don't get any more precise than a human eyeball comparing the face of the target to a photograph and deciding whether or not to pull the trigger. Of course, now we're getting personal, and that makes a lot of people very uncomfortable. It's sometimes easier to sit back and fire missiles at a depersonalised enemy. But is that a morally acceptable position in all cases, now that we can be so much more precise? And if, as Ukraine is doing, you have to hunt your target and only have a fleeting opportunity to kill them, can you afford to rely on long-range missiles and drones? Pragmatism is increasingly evident in political calculation. Former British Foreign Secretary Lord Owen asked, "Is it ethical to stand by and watch mass killing unfold?" when interviewed by my friend and colleague Gordon Carrera for the BBC. In office in the late 1970s, he considered ordering the assassination of the brutal Ugandan dictator Idi Amin as the lesser of two evils. He said it was not a moral act, but what life is about in these nasty situations. These are nasty situations. But there is no doubt that a team of people would be more precise and discriminatory than a £2,000 bomb. Target confirmation would not be in question if a soldier was close enough to touch his adversary in a hotel room in Dubai or a street in occupied Ukraine. This would be as legally sound as any other targeted killing technique, but with the expectation of zero collateral damage. So perhaps it's no surprise there have been dozens of alleged assassinations in occupied Ukraine and inside Russia. As Andrei Cherniak, an officer in Ukraine's military intelligence agency, said, "Any person who betrays Ukraine, shoots at Ukrainians or fires missiles on Ukrainians should understand that they are being watched and will be brought to justice."
Україна! Це буде Україна!
Put another way, as one senior parliamentarian once said to me, "When push comes to shove, I don't want you to give me a hanky to wipe away the blood. I'd like you to prevent the blood from being there in the first place, but it is un-British to make it too obvious. Not in front of the children." Defence in Depth is a weekly video output by the Telegraph of the big defence stories. If you would like a daily fix of content about the war in Ukraine, I'd suggest Ukraine the Latest, the Telegraph's podcast. For more defence stories, we've left links in the description below, and if you have a topic you'd like us to cover, let us know in the comments. Please do visit our website for the latest updates, news and analysis, or failing that, you could read the paper.